My name is Mark Scambray. I'm with Hardy Fall Protection Systems. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing. And today we're going to talk about fall protection anchors. Hardy is a fall protection anchor manufacturer. The president's Gary Hardy. I'll talk a little bit about Gary. Let's go here. So what is a tieback? So hopefully everybody knows what a tieback is. These are used on multi-story buildings for fall protection, for exterior building maintenance. They're tied back into the roof system like this. They can be used a bozeman's chair, outriggers, many different types, even with lifelines. So that's what an anchor is. Oh, by the way, if there's quite a number of people on, so if you want to go ahead and use the chat, I have that open. So feel free to write your questions into the chat. I will have, hopefully, Derek Wavering, a partner of ours that runs EBM Focus, is going to be on. I don't see him on right now, but hopefully he comes on. He can answer some questions maybe on exterior building maintenance plans, facade access plans. So here's the tieback. I like to stop here because one of the big questions that always arises is how tall should they be? We make them in 3 different sizes. We can make them custom. We've even made our original tieback up to 32 inches high. And the reason that this tieback is made 32 inches high, or we vary the height of the tieback, is because the rip strips, now our tieback, by the way, is used on wood buildings. We can make it for concrete and steel, but we're mainly talking about those podium 5/2 or hotels, 4-story and above, and we'll talk all about the requirements. But you can see here, the tieback is on a cricket here. The flat roof, they've created cricket. And so that cricket can raise up if you get close to the wall significantly. And that's why we have different heights. There is nothing in the code that says how high this tieback has to be. The reasoning behind it is on the right-hand side, you see the finished product. That boot there is a standard boot that fits on a pipe, and that needs 8 inches of clearance for waterproofing. That's the only reason we make it in different heights, because the rip strips or the cricket can be too high and not leave us enough to put the waterproofing boot on. So that's why the tieback is built that way. But this is the finished product on the right-hand side, and that's what it looks like. So Gary Hardy, I don't know if you guys may be familiar, some of you, with the Hardy frame. So Gary was a CB in Vietnam, and he came back and became a framing contractor. Then he invented the Hardy frame sometime in there and built that business up, and then sold it to MyTech. So it's still being sold and used, and this is a picture of on the right. And in 2015, someone came to him and showed him these fall protection anchors, and he thought he could do a better job, and he started working on the Hardy fall protection anchor, and that's who we are today. And so I'm going to show you all the different, oops, sorry. Yeah. Okay, so first we're going to start talking about the code. I've done extensive research. I talked to Cal OSHA. I work with the EBM companies. Basically, Cal OSHA, this is a Cal OSHA requirement, and every building constructed up to 3 stories or 36 feet or more in height shall have roof tiebacks. But then there's an exception. They're not required on buildings constructed up to 4 stories or 48 feet when the maintenance can be accomplished using extension tools, ladders, or approved ground equipment such as scaffolds or aerial devices. So most of the time, they're not needed less than 48 feet. As soon as it reaches 48 feet, and that's to the top of the parapet, tiebacks are required. Okay. And then this is just showing, when they say aerial devices, if they can clean the windows or do exterior building maintenance on a building up to 48 feet, that means they have clearance. There's not a pool there or something. There's different things that can prevent them from doing it. They can use extension tools for window washing. Then it's okay. But after 48 feet, it's mandatory. Then there's the other part of the code says how far are they spaced? Approximately 12-foot intervals. And that word approximately is very, very important. Engineers or EBM companies, they'll space these things out, but it's approximate. You do not want to interrupt the framing members. You don't want to upset the plywood layout. Okay, so it's approximate. I've seen them at 11.5 feet. I've seen them at 13. It doesn't really matter as long as you have the right number and they're approximately 12 foot apart. That's very important. They're all hot dip galvanized. There's a 2-inch inside diameter closed eye at the top, and it must take 5,000 pounds in any direction without permanent deformation. That means they understand that this is a wood building. It's going to bend a little bit, but it's got to come back. So without permanent deformation. The tieback itself must be designed by a professional engineer registered in the state of California. That's important. What is an opus? So I get this question a lot. It's a little bit confusing. An opus is an operating procedure. It establishes safe window cleaning, exterior maintenance procedure for buildings and structures. So this opus, and people ask, is it required? And I've called even window washing companies, and window washing companies will not go on the roof and start washing windows without an opus. It's an operating procedure on how to go over the edge of the building and perform window washing. Now, is it required? Well, it's required if you're going over the side of the building, but it's not really required. I see many, many buildings that they never do an opus. And so it's up to the decision of the owner, the architect, to decide whether they want the opus or not. It's not required to build the building. I have plenty of buildings that they never get an opus. They just put the tiebacks in and they go forward. They may never clean the windows. I've talked to people that they say, oh, we clean windows over 48 feet, and maybe they don't ever go over the edge. But it's up to the decision of the owner and the architect to decide whether or not they want to get an opus. And the opus is generated by a certified company with an SIT license, a scaffold inspection and testing license. So that's got to be a decision for the owner and the architect of whether or not they want to get an opus. You do not need it to build the building, though. This is an interesting, something interesting that's come up lately. We now have 37 people on, so if you came on late, feel free to use the chat to communicate. I have it open. I'll watch for it. So CDA, controlled descent apparatus. That's like on the left, the Bozeman's chair. And this chair, it can go up and down, or an outrigger supported powered scaffold. And I've seen on plans from the EBM companies that we're seeing more and more outrigger supported scaffolds. And I kind of dove into that because this is very expensive. And I'm trying to really do the best thing for the industry and what's best for these buildings, but these get very expensive. So I got down to the bottom of it, and someone has looked at the code, this Title 8, Section 3291F, controlled descent apparatus, that's that CDA, that's again the Bozeman's chair on the left, where they just require tiebacks and not the outrigger system, may be used up to 130 feet. Okay, that's perfect. When it can be demonstrated that it's safer than other methods of window cleaning. This is where I think this is not right. The EBM companies, the facade access planners, are interpreting this that the CDA may be used, but only when it's safer than other methods. So they're taking and saying, well, we're going to use an outrigger system, a powered scaffold, because this is safer than that. And if we can use this powered scaffold, we're going to go with it. And that's not the interpretation I see. It's perfectly fine just to use tiebacks. This gets very expensive. So it's a little bit of an interpretation thing with your EBM company. I would highly recommend saying, we're not going with outriggers. It's very expensive. And this is all that's referenced to that. And I see plenty of jobs just with outriggers at 12 foot on center. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And this is what an outrigger system looks like. But you can see that these outriggers are very expensive. There's normally 2 of them, and then they move them around the building. So you can see there's 2 total here. And then they move them around the building, and then they attach the scaffold to it. But you can see the tiebacks that are required, and this outrigger system, it's very, very expensive. It requires more tiebacks and these outrigger systems. A lot of people call them davits. All right, but that gets a little sticky. And the code is changing now. I think buildings, you guys would know better than me, but the code is changing that you have to have solar on these buildings. So I've been discussing with my EBM partners and people and architects and engineers. And you know what? We decided, here's a way to solve this problem. You can see on this building here, there's no solar. There's no mechanicals shown here. If there's a solar area here, they can't use outriggers, and that's when they switch back to tiebacks. So if I was designing this building, I would put dedicated future solar everywhere. You have to have it anyway. And that's just saying, hey, we may put solar there, and that will restrict them from using those outrigger systems and reduce the cost of the building, the tieback system. Because you can see here, they put dedicated future solar, I circled it, and they just put tiebacks at 12 foot on center and didn't go with those giant outrigger systems. And that's perfectly legal or perfectly acceptable. The Hardy Fall Protection Anchor is the only code approved anchor. It's the only product with a code evaluation report. I don't know if many of you may know me from, I worked at Truss Joist for 13 years in standard structures for another 7. And then I started Structural Resource Group, and I market products to engineers. Gary and I are partners in this business now, but I still work with other products. And I have probably introduced 20, 30 products to engineers and architects. And the first question is, does it have a code evaluation report, ICC or IATMO? If it didn't, they'd say, I'm not interested. Now I have the only product that has a code evaluation report, and I'm still seeing many, many projects that have a bolted, no code approval tieback on it. And this is just a reference in Simpson's catalog. You can see they use ICC and IATMO. In fact, their most common product, the A35 framing anchor, has an IATMO approval. But the reason to have a code evaluation report, it plays an important, I'm reading this, it plays an important role in the building industry, providing an independent third-party review of the architectural and structural products. Evaluations are publicly developed criteria to determine the product meets the intent of the building code. So basically, this is why people get code evaluation reports and why engineers and architects require that. But I'm dealing with a product, my competition, that's inferior and doesn't have a code evaluation report. It's very frustrating. So just wanted to touch on that a little bit. This is our code evaluation report. I won't go reading through this whole thing, but this is our code evaluation report on all of our products. These are just different, all the different pages from that report, but very, very detailed. We have extensions, our outrigger systems. We do have a California supplement and the City of Los Angeles supplement. Very, very important. Oops. Testing. So each tieback that is, Frank says, nobody calls outriggers davits. I know, I think davits are the base, but I don't call them davits at all. That was a Frank commented. Roof tieback testing is required. So all, this is from this section of the code, all complete building maintenance equipment installations shall be inspected and tested in the field before placing into initial service. So we use specialized testing, an independent company, and we provide testing on every product, and it's included in our tieback. No one has to pay for it. It's included. It's very important. We feel it's important. It's tested to 2,500 pounds in any direction. So they test it in one direction, wherever they can tie off to. I've only had to go out to 2 job sites in 3 years. where the tieback was failing. The first one, the framer had not put any screws in, so that was an easy one. The next one we got out, and it was just bending too much, and I couldn't figure it out. I went underneath and looked, and the blocking that the framer had put in had 1.5 inch gaps everywhere. And I said, okay, well, here's your problem. So go fill those, shim those, or put in new blocks. And sure enough, that was the problem. So this is a heavy problem. This thing weighs 85 pounds. So it's not going to be the tieback that's failed. It's going to be the framing members. Also important, each installation shall undergo periodic inspection and test at least every 12 months by the equipment manufacturer or an authorized representative. Specialized testing does that annual inspection. They go out and test the tiebacks to make sure that they're still good. I think that's very important. If there's any problem with the framing, water intrusion, rot, anything like that, you don't want someone going over the edge and falling to their death or something. So I think that's important. This is an example of the test report. You can see here that they'll tie the tiebacks together, and they use a turnbuckle and bring it up, and that's the gauge there, the monitoring equipment, and they bring it up to 2,500 pounds or over 2,500 pounds, and it's got to stay there for a certain amount of time and not lose load or anything like that. So they use a chain or a threaded rod to do this. So, and this is an example of a test report. I can get you that if you ever need that, but that's what it is. So understanding the code, just a summary, when are they required? 3 stories or higher, but they can be eliminated if the windows can be cleaned using a ladder or lift. They're required over 48 feet, 12 foot on center approximate. Registered structural engineer must design the system. Now this one is interesting, 6 to 8 feet from the building edge. I didn't talk about it because it's not addressed in the code. Tiebacks can be placed closer to the parapet if condensers or solar panels interfere. I've seen them 2 feet, I've seen them 15 feet. I've seen a job where they ran the tiebacks down the middle of the building and there was nothing on the roof, and they could access the tiebacks from both sides of the building. So there's nothing in the code. I called Cal OSHA and said, hey, what about this? And they said, well, we like it 6 to 8 feet. Okay, so that's why people put them 6 to 8 feet. And it must be tested. We talked about that. So that all has to be tested prior to the use. If you do have any questions, I can probably answer most of your questions, but I will refer to Cal OSHA. I know Amit Gupta and Larry McCune. Amit handles Southern California and Larry Northern. They may have done some change up there, but I still have, these are their phone numbers. And you always leave a message and they call you back. They never answer, but you can send them an email. If you need this information, go ahead and send me a text or an email. Party fall protection is only fully tested, roof tieback, and code approved, LA City included. Like I said, here's our code approval with LA City. It's manufactured at Tobin Steel in Santa Ana, and he has an LA City fabricator's license, and they're all galvanized. They all have to be galvanized. We did really only the post has to be galvanized, and maybe the top of the plate, and we tried doing that originally, but it was too difficult. They just dropped the whole thing into the galvanization, so the whole thing's galvanized. So these are the Hardy tieback products. We have our original standard tieback on the left, required 2 beams. It was much easier to install than the bolted connection. It was a little bit more expensive, and we sold a lot of those. But about 2.5 years ago, Gary came up with the saddle tieback. We went and had it tested and put it into our code approval, and it's taking over by storm. It requires only 1 beam, and it's critical. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Our adjustable cap and flush mount on the right-hand side, this is our newest product. It's in our code approval also now. So when there's a deck system, whether it's there's a deck on the roof, whether it's a pedestal system, or they want it to be flush with a liquid applied or a roofing that and they're not going to use the deck pedestal system, we now have an adjustable. I was having to order, and on these jobs there might be like 50 tiebacks on the job, and 8 of them were under these decks. And so we were having to specially make these to fit perfectly on these decks. Well, now we have an adjustable that we have 3 different sizes, a 3-inch, a 6-inch, and a 9-inch, and they can adjust from 3.5 inches to all the way up to 12.5 inches. So it's a great product. I mean, there's only a few of them on each job, but it saves a ton of time. We also do have a bolted tieback. There are projects where the bolted tieback has been designed. They need them. They've already put the beams in. I sold some last week that they already had the beams in. We can't take them out, so I can supply those. We also have a wall mount anchor that we see every once in a while on projects. And Gary's come up with this Nelson stud design where you just put a plate on the back of it, so then there's no bolts sticking out, so it's much better for waterproofing. So those are our new products. Design services, we're going to talk about EBM services in a little bit. So we can all get to that. The party tieback, the saddle tieback. So there's a few different configurations or details. The upper right is on a beam. The tieback is 5.5 inches wide. I can custom make them to any widths. We're going to talk about using a piece of engineered wood, but they come 5.5 inches wide. So that fits right over a 6x. Then we can also put it on one double truss. That double truss has 1 3/4 inch, 1 3/4 engineered wood on the outside, and that comes to 6 3/4. And we make that, stock that. So it's 6 3/4, fits right over the top of that. So one double truss, one beam. On the right here, you can see here, this is a 5 1/4. So that's a piece of Paralam or LVL, 5 1/4. So instead of creating another skew, we use a 3/8 inch shim, and they just screw it on, and we've tested that, and that works fine. We can do it with eye joist, where they have to put in the filler block. I rarely see that. They'll just throw a beam in, piece of engineered wood. It's a lot of framing to do that. A lot of extra work, so they just throw an extra beam in. So here's an installation video on how it's installed.
Introduced readily available over the counter to meet all 20 Hardy saddle attachment of record. Instructions provided on the plan to each beam prior to joining each beam on the joist layout, then finish joisting. Strapping adjacent to each saddle. Rows of blocks are installed perpendicularly at each end saddle in each direction. Snap lines 2 inches away from saddle butts the beam. Then install 2x4 flat. If rip strips installed directly on top of the wrapper equal directly on top of the 2 rows of block. You can start installing rip strips and/or inch-long tieback device will extend the members adjacent to the device available. Generally, a post similar in width to each twist strap. The Hardy saddle tieback can be pretty, or for more information, call or visit our website at hardyfps.com.
Okay. Illyrio, we have CAD details sheets in PDF and CAD. I don't have Revit. On our website at hardyfps.com under resources, and you can download our detail sheets. Okay. This is what it looks like in the field. This is the very first saddle project I sold. I went out and it was a Spring Hill Suites right off the 57 freeway. And it worked perfect. In fact, the engineer designs all of the detailing, and he put one strap over the top, and it worked perfectly. Now, you've got to calculate that, so I don't know. He did it his way, but here's an example. This block right here, that's put in so we have something to nail the sheathing to, but very simple. Here's a detail on for trusses. Like I said, that's 1 3/4 piece of engineered wood on both sides of a double truss, 6 3/4 wide. I think it's a little bit less than 6 3/4 is the width of the truss, and the trusses and the engineered wood. But you also have to accommodate, there is some thickness for the plates too. So 6 3/4 works perfectly, and we've sold a lot of those. You can see here on this one, they put straps on the bottom here. So you'll see a lot of different details. The engineers got to come up with their design. This is that detail sheet that is located on our website. Again, hardyfps.com. It stands for Fall Protection Systems. And under resources, you can download this in PDF or CAD. So it outlines all what we're discussing today. I get many engineers that just put this whole sheet on their plan. This is another sheet for the I-joist. We don't use that a lot. This is an up close of that detail with engineered wood. You can see the shim there, 3/8 inch shim. That's on that same detail. Oops. Here's our adjustable saddle. We make two different types, but this is the one we stock both of them. This one here is our adjustable for one beam, and it goes. You can see we moved all the screw holes down, so now we can move this up on the beam and adjust it 3 inches in higher. So we make them in 3 different sizes, like I said, 3, 6, and 9. You can adjust it all the way up to 12 inches high. This one here is for when they have double joists, and because it's low, we can get away with using 2 2x10s or 2x8s. And then this doesn't have a lip around it, and we can adjust it up and down, whatever they want. It can be completely flush. So that I get every once in a while, I get a project that they want to use no pedestals, and it'll be slanted a little bit. So you can move this all over the place, side to side, and tilt it so it completely goes flush with the roof. This is the detail sheet for that. Again, that's on our website. Here's that detail. You can see here's the shim. So we can move this up and down. We can put a maximum 3-inch filler in. So if it was flush, it would be down 3 inches, and then we can move it up 3 inches, and we make it in 3 different sizes. So that's how we adjust it. And you can see here if they want it flush mount. We call this a cap mount, where we put the cap on the top, and it's flush with the top of the paving or the decking system. And then here's where they've used they're not using a pedestal and that sloping roof, and they just put the waterproofing down into the pipe there and waterproof it. It's sealed in there, so the water doesn't have anywhere to go. And then we make a smaller cap that goes on the inside instead of the outside, like over here. This is our newest one, is our alternate tieback, and basically our original tieback had that big box, but we figured out and we tested it that we don't need to have 4 sides to it. The plate on the top is enough strength, so now we just make a wide saddle, and we can make it 21 inches wide for a 24-inch on center truss system. It's rare, but sometimes the beams or the trusses are spanning too far, and the truss itself or the beam can't handle the 5,000 pounds in any direction. In fact, just the other day I was working with VCA Engineering, and they couldn't get a 6x12 to work over 20 feet. And then I said, oh, you know, we don't want to go to 2 beams. They went back and they checked, and they got a paralam to work over 20 feet. So that works on 1 beam. So that solved the problem. But sometimes we have to go with 2 beams to go to the span. And so we'll go to this alternate tieback where it'll span between 2 double trusses or 2 beams. Again, we have a detail sheet on that. The plate's half inch thick, Mark. Mark asked how thick the plate is. This plate on the top is a 1/2 inch thick here. This is our standard tieback. This again was our original one. I only supply these now when it's on the plan. The plan is old. They made a box, and we slid that thing down inside of it like this, and it slid down in. There were 4 sides to it, so it's screwed into all 4 sides. But we've tested the other alternate, so we're trying to go to that. But sometimes it's on plan, so I still have to supply that. We can supply the outrigger system. We supply the beams, the beam and the tiebacks. If it's a portable outrigger, they buy that separately, but we can supply that outrigger system. Okay. So it's about 1 out of 20 projects have outriggers on it, but it's getting more and more prevalent. Okay. So you guys are all going to be my first guinea pigs. This is my video. My first video I made, and I'm going to show you the difference between a bolted tieback and our Hardy saddle. My daughter helped me edit this, so don't laugh, but I'm no framer, and this was difficult. So I'm going to show you.
Hi, this is Mark Scambray with installing a Hardy saddle. Let's get to it. Okay, we're going to install 20 quarter using our impact driver. Okay, I sped that up. Okay, now we're going to install the common bolted tie back using 4 5/8" bolts. First, we will mark the hole locations, drill the holes, and then install the 5/8" bolts. That took us almost 8 minutes to install the bolted tie back. If there's a direct applied sealing, as there is on many projects, the nuts would have to be countersunk as shown in the detail, which would significantly increase the install time. Thank you for watching our video, and let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. It was fun to make, but I can tell you that this bolted tie back, and I have plenty of framers that will attest to this, it is a bear. It took me 2 weeks to make that. I went and bought a special drill. I drilled down through. I used an auger bit. The auger bit was the wrong kind of bit. It got stuck. I had to hammer it out. I had to get another bit. It's very difficult to drill down through that. And I was standing on the ground. I can't imagine doing it on the roof. But the biggest thing is it requires 2 beams, and they have to countersink it if it's a direct applied sealing. I didn't bother to countersinking. I wouldn't even know how. I don't have the right tools. But if you imagine having to do that when it's already installed in the ceiling, so it's very difficult. I'm looking at Peter Oliver says, what do you do with 3-story buildings and slope roofs? Again, 3 stories won't need it, and slope roofs don't have it. Maria, thank you. Maria said, great video. Okay, so I'm trying to show you the difference between these bolted tiebacks. First, they don't have any code approval, and they're much more difficult to install and require, that's spelling, twice instead of twice, as many beams as and trusses. So there's extra beams and trusses. Then I see all different types. Here's one here on the left. This one has an HSS steel tube with an angle welded to it and screwed in. I mean, that has to be special made. We stock ours at Whitecap. You can get it tomorrow if you want it, but this would all have to be special made and still requires 2 beams. I've seen other ones that, look at this one, has 12 bolts. I mean, that would be impossible. And then on top of that, see where I started circling these things? This one here, a lot of them show, because if the trusses or the beams or joists are say 24 inches on center, you don't want to put these at less than 24 inches on center, because then you'd upset the layout and you'd add more beams, even more beams. So they put a block between it and bolt to the block, but then that block requires a big hanger. This one doesn't show the hanger. I'm going to show you here coming up. Look at this over here. This one here, this is on Red Hill Mixed Use. See that big hanger? That's a $13 hanger. That hanger is very expensive. So not only are you paying for the tieback, but you're installing that hanger on 2 blocks. So that's 4 hangers on each one. So that's almost $50, or it's over $50 for just hangers, because that hanger's got to take the 5,000-pound load too. So you see it here again. So these are all details I see. Many engineers are going to our Hardy saddle. This is another one where they put in 8 bolts. That's a side view. This is on trusses. By the way, I've never seen a single truss used and work. It's always double trusses. There's no way they can get 5,000 pounds to work on these trusses. So it's always a double truss. That was just a detail they showed one single. This is our tieback. Again, it would require a hanger there. So it's very expensive to do these bolted tiebacks. I added this one in. I just found it yesterday. I was going through my pictures. This is our Hardy saddle. I went out to the job site. They called me. They said, wanted me to look at it. And I was like, what did you do here? We had a beam here and a beam here. and they decided to put a block in, a full depth block, and a giant welded hanger, and then screwed it on, and then had to screw through the hanger. These are some of the crazy things I see at job sites. So I just threw that in there. You know, again, just put it on one beam and you're done. Screw the screws and move on. It's also very difficult to do this work when you're on the roof and bolting down and having to reach underneath. If the sheathing's on, you can't do it. You have to have a guy underneath to do this. Or you put the tie back on, you screw it on, and you're done. And you do it all from above. Okay, so whose responsibility? Architect and owner, their responsibility, they need to get the layout. Someone's got to come up with the layout. And that's why they go to exterior building maintenance or a facade access specialist. Many engineers, I see some engineers that just go ahead and do them at 12 foot on center. I could name a number of engineers who just place them at 12 foot on center, put a beam at each of them, and they're done. But this is a great example of a very nice exterior building maintenance plan. All these dots are the tiebacks. They count them up for me, 140 of them, and off we go. Again, 44 on this one, the blue dots. Very nice. Then sometimes they get complicated. Sometimes they don't put the count, and then I have to figure out, okay, how many are on here, right? And counting can get a little bit confusing. Here they've put the blue. So safety specialists, exterior building maintenance, facade access companies, these are the guys that are going to do these layouts. People can hire them. There's Access Systems, Lynn Safety, Olympic, Labib Funk has their own division now. Highline has is very popular, and Versatile and EBM Focus. I work with EBM Focus. I've done some work with Access Systems. Derek Wavering is, I don't think he's on the call. He was going to try to, Derek, are you there? I don't see you on the list. He was going to try to make it on here today. But Derek, I do not, Mark, I don't have a list. Send me a text or that's fine. I'll send you a list. EBM Focus, I'm sending all my work there now. They have 3 different levels of service. They do, they'll just do a layout for you. They'll do and say, here you go, here's the layout, or they'll do a full EBM sheets, and then they'll do a 3rd level with Opus. I think it's they're doing a great job of sending a number of projects to them. But let me get back over there. Here we go. Here's what I run into though. What to avoid. This is one thing you can remember when you're talking to your EBM consultant. Tell them, do not place any type of detail below the roof for the tiebacks. Access Systems doing a good job. They've gotten rid of it. This is their detail. They used to put this detail on her showing a bolted system. Again, this over here, this is Lynn Safety. They show a bolted system. Even Highline puts this on here with this strange detail, bolting down. They are not the structural engineer. The structural engineer is designing the framing members and how it's framed and how it's connected. They are supplying the tieback. But why are they doing this? Here's Versatile. Versatile went all the way and said, oh, okay, here, put this hanger here, put this parallel beam, there's a flat piece of parallel in here. They're not the engineer of record. The engineer of record has this whole other set of designs, and this confuses the framer. The framer looks at this where they go, and he sees this detail, and he's thinking, why I need 2 beams? Well, the reason they're doing it is because Versatile Access Systems and Lynn Safety, they sell this tieback. They're my competitor. And so when they get hired, they put this on their EBM sheets. So my advice is to tell them, please don't show these details on the plan. Just show where they go and have a detail like this on the left here, or this one here. You can see here, I circled, it says attachment to the base plate and or existing structure to be engineered by others. That means by a structural engineer. Even right here on Versatiles, they said 4x12 Doug fir per SEO. It's the engineer's responsibility to design all that. So this is where we get to the engineer's responsibility. They do all the framing. They're going to say what straps. They have to run a calculation to make sure this thing works with their system. How many straps they need, how thick, how big are the blocks. You know, how long are these filler blocks? All different types of things they have to take into consideration. And that's the engineer's responsibility, not the EBM company. They should not be showing you how it's framed. So the engineer takes care of all the framing. They should have a detail. They can use our detail sheet to show that, but they come up with calculations for this. Our responsibility, we make them, make the tiebacks. We do all the testing. We actually contract with specialized testing, and it's always included. And then I price everything. I do all the pricing. Tobin Steel's our manufacturer. These are pictures I took in their factory. This is before galvanizing, but they make hundreds at a time. It's stocked at Whitecap and Ganal Lumber here in California. So very convenient. We're the only one stocked anywhere. So if someone needs one tomorrow or they need an extra one, they can go pick it up. These are, like I said, they're 85 pounds. This S24 weighs like 85 pounds. It's going to cost about $668 per tieback. They're not cheap, so you don't want to put extra. You want to make sure that you're talking to someone that knows what they're doing. And many times, I know Derek Wavering at EBM Focus, I mean, he's taking out tiebacks all over the place because there's different regulations for operable windows, for balconies, all different types of situations. So you want to make sure you don't just throw these on everywhere. These are just they're oh God, I'm forgetting the word. Testimonials from different framers. Larabeer Framer, Daryl Allen, Robbie Proffer, they love this product. Force Framing uses all of our product. I need to add him on here. So these framers really prefer the Hardy saddle. It's kind of obvious. We do have a patent on the product. So if anybody sees someone using a saddle type tieback, I'd like to know about it. I've already had some issues with it. One of the things I get with talking to engineers and architects, and sometimes they say, well, I don't want to put anything proprietary on the plan. And so I have to point out, well, let's look at your plan already. Your plan already has Simpson A35 all over it. I mean, you're already putting something proprietary on it. If one of my competitors wants to come back and say, hey, let's use a bolted tieback, oh, okay, how much is that going to cost? Well, we got to add an extra beam at each one of them. So it's okay to put, everybody's putting a Hardy saddle on it, but if you do run into that, this is my logic to that. I do point out that the IATMO is a large part of the code evaluation reports now. Simpson's using it. This is their A35. This is their A35 in their IATMO report I put on there. People ask me, sometimes they don't know about IATMO. They're all very familiar with ICC. But IATMO is approved everywhere.
Thank you very much for joining us today. If you have any questions, please email or call me. Have a great day.